The night everything cracked open started quietly, which is funny because life-changing moments rarely announce themselves. I was standing in our kitchen at almost midnight barefoot on cold tile reheating leftovers I didn't even want when my husband said it. Not loudly, not angrily, almost casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "You know," he said, scrolling on his phone, "I'm glad we signed that prenup. You never know how people turn out." He didn't look up, didn't see my face, and in that moment I realized something that hit harder than any insult he'd ever thrown at me. He didn't see me as his wife. He saw me as a risk he had already contained. 8 years earlier, I would have laughed that off. I would have told myself he was just being practical, that love and paperwork didn't have to contradict each other. Back then, I was the girl people underestimated without even trying. The one with big ideas, second-hand furniture, and a resume that made people nod politely before moving on. He, on the other hand, walked like doors were supposed to open for him, and they usually did. When we met, he told me he admired how uncomplicated I was. I thought he meant grounded. Turns out, he meant easy to overlook. We married faster than my friends were comfortable with, but grief has a way of speeding things up. I'd lost my dad not long before, and when someone offers you certainty while you're drowning, you grab it. His family insisted on the prenup. They smiled while doing it, which somehow made it worse. "It's just smart," his mother said, tapping the document like it was common sense, not a warning label. "You understand?" Right, I did understand. I understood they thought I didn't belong. I signed anyway because I wanted to prove them wrong, because I thought love was louder than suspicion. For a while, things were good, or maybe they were just quiet enough for me not to notice the imbalance. I supported his career, adjusted mine around his schedule, told myself this was partnership. Slowly, my world shrank to accommodate his. Comments crept in subtle at first. Jokes about my income. Questions about when I'd do something more stable. He never outright said I wasn't enough, he didn't have to. The silence did that work for him. The real shift came the year he got promoted. New title, new office, new confidence. I became background noise. Conversations turned into checklists. Affection into obligation. And then one night during an argument that started over something stupid, he laughed and said, "Relax. It's not like you'd walk away with anything anyway." That's when the prenup stopped being theoretical. It wasn't protection, it was leverage. I started paying attention after that. Not obsessively, not suspiciously, just awake. I noticed how he spoke to me when no one was around, how his tone changed when money came up, how decisions were suddenly made without me. And I noticed something else too. I was disappearing. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone would intervene. Just quietly, one compromise at a time. The breaking point didn't come with a scream or a slammed door, it came with a letter. Plain envelope. Legal letterhead. A name I hadn't heard in decades. A distant relative I barely remembered, someone who had lived quietly, invested wisely, and apparently watched from afar. She had left me everything. Not a trust for my benefit, not conditions, not supervision. Just me. The number didn't feel real at first. I read it again and again, waiting for a catch. There wasn't one. I didn't tell him. Not because I was plotting revenge, but because for the first time in my life something was mine alone. No approval required. No explanation owed. And the strangest thing happened once I knew. I stood taller, spoke clearer. When he dismissed me, it stopped landing. When he talked down to me, it sounded smaller. Power shifts do that. They change the room before anyone else realizes. I filed for divorce quietly. No theatrics, no ultimatums. He was almost relieved at first, which hurt more than anger would have. He reminded me smugly that the prenup stood, that he'd made sure everything was fair. Fair! I nodded, signed, walked away with exactly what the paper said I would. Nothing. Or so he thought. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was work, learning, building something I'd always been told was unrealistic. I invested carefully, hired slowly, failed a few times, learned more. I stopped asking permission to take up space. And the more I became myself again, the clearer it was how small that marriage had tried to make me. The moment he found out came later, much later, after the divorce was final and the narrative had already spread. He'd told people I left for personal reasons, that I couldn't handle the pressure of his world. And then my name showed up somewhere he couldn't ignore. A business article, a donation, a number with too many zeros to dismiss. He called. Of course he did. His voice was different, softer, curious. Why didn't you tell me, he asked, like that was the real betrayal? I met him once in a neutral place because I wanted to look him in the eye when I said it. Because you didn't see me when you thought I had nothing, I told him. And I wasn't about to teach you my value after you spent years ignoring it. He tried to reframe it as misunderstanding, as timing, as mistakes. I let him talk. When he ran out of words, I stood up and said the truest thing I'd ever said out loud. You didn't lose me because of the prenup. You lost me because you thought I was small. Walking away from that table felt better than any victory speech ever could. Not because I won, but because I finally stopped playing a rigged game. People still have opinions about my story. Some say I was right to keep it to myself. Others say honesty would have changed things. Maybe, but here's what I know for sure. The world is full of people who mistake access for ownership, silence for weakness, and love for control. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel like your worth depended on what you could provide, I want to hear from you. Was walking away the right thing to do? Or does fairness require transparency even when the system isn't fair to begin with? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it.